Hello, and welcome to Chatty AF, the anime feminist podcast. My name is Vrai Kaiser. I'm an editor and contributor for the site, and you can find me on Twitter at WriterVry, where I do the things, and co-hosting my other podcast at TrashPod.
I'm Peter Fobian. I'm an associates features editor at Crunchyroll and a contributor and editor at Anime Feminist.
We also have a very special guest with us today.
Hi, I'm Dawn, aka Usamimi. I am the host of the Anime Nostalgia podcast, which you can find at animenostalgia.blogspot.com, and you can find me on Twitter at BunnyCartoon. That is me. Hello.
Thank you so much for being on, because you are definitely our guide into the world of Devilman. Today we are talking about the Netflix 10-episode miniseries Devilman Crybaby, directed by Masaaki Yuasa, who you might know as the director of Tatami Galaxy, Kaiba, or Ping Pong, or, his trademark art style has appeared in individual episodes of Space Dandy, Samurai Champloo, Adventure Time. Whenever you see those really flat colors and sort of paper doll-looking characters with the really stylized contrast, that's probably a Yuasa joint. Dawn, you are a longtime fan of the series? How long have you been into Devilman?
Oh, gosh. Probably since the 90s, I want to say. Because that sounds about right, because the first thing I ever saw of Devilman was the old OVAs back in the day, the ones that manga released here with that classic dub that people are rediscovering now.
Right, that was the very first Devilman thing to make it over, right?
Anime-wise, yes. Anime-wise, yes. Comic-wise, they've tried to bring Devilman over here, a couple times, but in really weird, bizarre ways that would never sell in a million years. So it never, really took off or anything. Nobody really cared. The most it ever got was the attention of, the one guy from Danzig. Yeah, Danzig, the heavy metal musician. He really, really likes Go Nagai, and he really, really likes Devilman, and he tried to make that happen, and, nobody cared. But, bless him for trying. He's a big fan, so he was just like, everybody should like Devilman.
Well, there's also that one live-action film starring the chairman from Iron Chef, which I believe is based on Devilman.
Yes, the live-action Devilman, which is not very good.
I definitely want to watch it now. I don't mind if it's not good.
It's pretty bad.
Okay, now I have to... Crying Freeman! No, maybe... Some... Internet, if I am wrong. Tell me.
Well... I don't know I can't remember who's in... There was a live-action Devilman in the early 2000s or mid-2000s. If that's the one you're talking about.
Possibly. It could... No, this is 1995, so it's possible that I'm talking about a terrible, glorious adaptation of an entirely different...
I know there was a live-action Crying Freeman, but I haven't seen that. But
it's magical.
Yeah, I've heard it's pretty amazing, though.
I took a tangent to something else entirely.
Well, I mean, it kind of works with, Devilman, because, Crying Freeman, he cries all the time after he kills somebody.
It's very sad.
So Devilman Crybaby, he cries when people are sad, because empathy.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because, I guess to give... this is, by the way, going to be a complete spoiler cast, because there's really no way at all to talk about this anime if you don't, and also it's available in its entirety to binge, so, stop here, go, and come back.
Yeah.
You're expected to binge this show. If you didn't watch it right, because binge on.
Yeah, you're supposed to just mainline it all in one day.
That's how Americans consume media. Yeah, no other way around it.
I did the first half over a couple days, and that was kind of a mistake. Because the first half is much weaker anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you lose momentum in those early parts, you're not going to come back to this, I don't think.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if, they made it with, that in mind, that they were going to that they knew that people would just like watch all of this in one go.
Mm-hmm. Well, Peter, you were looking in a little bit to the production history, yeah, where Netflix kind of swooped in at the last minute and became the distributor.
Yeah, I've been following a couple conversations on that. My understanding is it was. I don't want to. My understanding is, I will repeat that because I don't know any of this as a fact, but I think they were originally planning to make it like a movie or a two-part movie or an OVA or something like that, and they were having trouble getting the project together. It was, originally not a Netflix project, but I think they were having issues, and then Netflix came in and basically got the rights that allowed them to finish it, but they weren't really ever part of the production, no.
Yeah, when I was at Anime Fest last year, I actually asked, because I was just really curious, at the Yuasa panel, I asked him, like, did you just like go to Netflix and be like, I want to make a Devilman anime? Because I was just really curious, like, how did that happen? And he was like, oh no, it was, I was having a conversation with the people who were basically trying to put it together, and he was like, oh, you're working on a Devilman thing, and they were like, yeah, actually it would be pretty cool if you worked on it. Would you want to work on it? And he was like, wow, that would be really hard, like Devilman is such a thing, and he was like, I don't know if I can do it, but I want to do it. And so he was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. And then he said, like, Netflix came in later and was just like, yeah, we want to help you make this thing. Here's a bunch of money. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Okay, yeah, I'm reading the thread now. So it looks like it was Aniplex and Dynamic Planning were the ones that put the project together. It was going to be a film or an anime, and then they offered it to Netflix to distribute. So I don't even know if it was necessarily discovered by Netflix. I think Aniplex just kind of went to them, and Aniplex, I guess, Netflix thought it was attractive enough to buy global rights to it.
Well, I mean, it has some of the same general appeal as that they sold Castlevania on, except that Castlevania was a lot more campy. So I can see how they thought this would sell.
Well, yeah, Netflix definitely leads into gothic and/or fantasy, because they also have Seven Deadly Sins, Violet Evergarden, Fate, just all the Fates that they can get their hands on. So there's definitely like a Netflix type, usually high production fantasy or gothic horror type.
They also previously they had also already had the rights for distribution for outside of Japan, I think. I'm not sure if it was inside Japan as well, but for the Cyborg 009 versus Devilman special that came out not too long ago, and that was on there. And then Netflix also had carried a bunch of Yuasa stuff previously, like Mind Game and Genius Party and like all that stuff.
Did they? I know G-Kids owns those now, and I don't know if they purchased those from Netflix, or maybe the license ran out and they picked it up.
I believe the license ran out, because they were on there for like a few years, and then they just recently, in the past 2 years, went away.
Jeez, I never knew. I would have watched those on Netflix for sure.
Yeah, I was about to say that I thought that this had been the first Devilman animated property in a while, like since Devilman Lady in the early 2000s, but there have been specials since then, huh?
Yeah, the Cyborg 009 and versus Devilman thing, I think was supposed to be for the Cyborg 09 anniversary or something like that. And it's okay. It was more like just a weird sort of like, hey, we have these two properties. Let's put them together and make a weird thing. And we'll get Jam Project to sing a song for it. It'll be cool. And it was interesting. I wouldn't say, oh, if you liked Crybaby, go run out and watch that right now, because they're tonally like way different.
It's interesting to me because Devilman strikes me. I've been calling Crybaby the woman called Fujiko Mine of the Devilman franchise, as it struck me, because there was, kind of this big cultural property that was getting more and more. I don't want to say creatively lazy. I can't say that for the Lupin franchise. I've watched a lot of Lupin, but I can't speak to Devilman. That then had this auteur director come in and direct this very special limited run that did a lot of artistically daring things. So, I guess
I'd say that's a fair comparison, because Devilman had been kind of like not really doing a whole lot and not really going anywhere, and this is the like 50th anniversary, like Go Nagai's like 50th anniversary of doing manga, I believe. Yeah, so you see a lot of that like Go Nagai 50th anniversary logo going around. So they wanted to do something special, and that's why you're seeing like, you know, there's gonna be a new Cutie Honey next season, and like all this other stuff.
Yeah, it looks like he recently did a Devilman Chi 3 years ago. So he recently did another manga for the franchise. Yeah.
And I think it was it Devilman Grimoire? That manga came out for the 40th anniversary about 10 years ago. So like, you know, there's stuff that's been coming out, but it's just not been like, you know, selling like hotcakes or anything like that.
This is something I want to discuss, because the Devilman continuity is truly labyrinthine.
Oh,
so
it's ridiculous.
so there's the original Devilman manga, then there's Devilman Lady, which is the official sequel that got canceled. Then there's Violence Jack, which is a sequel to Devilman Lady, maybe, and then there's some reboots and remakes and spin-offs in there. I got very confused.
There's like Shin Devilman, there's Demon Lord Dante, which is like proto Devilman. That was like Devilman before Devilman. There's like all these kind of offshoots and things that are kind of like not really sequels or prequels or anything, but they're still kind of connected. And then like other characters from his other works show up. So like if you somehow decide you're gonna watch Violence Jack or read Violence Jack, like Cutie Honey is in there for no reason, really.
She's Celine, right?
She's just there.
Okay.
And it's like, what? What's going on? So sometimes I like to think, you know, that's why I think recently I said something on Twitter about like kind of comparing him to like Tezuka, because like Tezuka kind of does the same thing with some of his properties and
the Star
and
System.
Yeah. So it's not quite the same, but it like his characters pop up like over and over again, doing sometimes the same thing, sometimes slightly different, but still the same sort of. And it's like, what? So it's just a mess. It's just.
I did not know who to blame Tsubasa Reservoir Chronicle on, and now I do.
Yes, Clamp is a huge fan of Go Nagai's, which is funny because, like, you know, just recently, up until Devilman, like, not a lot of people in the West were really, you know, they didn't really know Go Nagai's work other than, like, oh, he made Devilman, oh, he made Cutie Honey. But that didn't mean, like, a lot to them because they'd never seen Devilman or they'd never seen Cutie Honey. So now that everybody has seen Crybaby, which is basically an adaptation of the original manga, now they're like, oh, so he made a lot of weird stuff, huh? And it's like, yeah, so when you say like, oh yeah, Clamp was definitely a fan of Go Nagai's, it's like, oh, that makes sense, because like it's totally a lot of their stuff is totally messed up.
They're doujins where they give Ryo and Akira tiny children because of reasons are very cute.
Yeah, they have an egg baby.
Do you think Stephen King might be a Go Nagai fan?
I would buy it. I definitely had a King period in high school, and I don't recall him mentioning it.
Oh, no, I'm just saying.
But I would buy it.
You got The Dark Tower, which is kind of a similar mess of everything he's ever written crammed into a single chronology.
Yeah, that actually, to bring it back around to Crybaby in specific, this is, so Go Nagai's franchise of work a lot of them seem to work together because Timeloop, or at least like Rebirth, and this is a series that overtly, like the entire series kind of hinges on that factor, at least the ending in a lot of ways, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit.
So you're basically saying all these things could exist because it seems like Devilman kind of has this cyclical history where very likely humans continue to get wiped out by Rio/Satan.
Well, specifically in Violence Jack, Rio is a reincarnation who is, like, specifically existing the way he does because he wants to be punished because of what he did to Akira.
Oh, okay.
If I've read correctly.
Cool.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I haven't actually read Violence Jack.
I did a little research and then said, I will never read this.
Yeah.
Do I look like I need heterosexual Rio Asuka in my life? No, I do not. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Don't make the mistake I did and watch some of that anime when you're young. Like, don't do it.
Oh, I'm sorry. But yeah, to me because time loops are kind of in vogue. Speaking of people inspired by Go Nagai, Evangelion's theory of 1,000 multiverses, and also rebuild
sure.
as like a time loop thing. It's very much, to me it seems super significant, and it's why I find the ending of Crybaby to be a hopeful one rather than kind of a bleak tragedy like the original manga is. It ends on.
Yeah, the original manga is very depressing.
Right.
And I mean, at first glance, the end of Crybaby can seem pretty depressing as well, because I mean, obviously, but it also Yuasa kind of frames it as like, well, this isn't the first time this happened. It, like, if you pay attention to like all of the visual clues that they're leaving in this, like, they're like, oh, well, this could happen again because it already happened again. And so, it's just like one of those things, like you said, like Evangelion, like, oh, they're just cursed to just keep replaying their roles over and over again because Satan can't get his shit together and can't figure out what love is.
Well, that's what struck me as interesting about Crybaby specifically, because, like, I don't know if you saw that real good tweet thread that was looking at the visual language and specifically the moons in the various apocalypse sequences. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really great.
Yeah, well, and they were talking about, the moon as representative of Satan circling Akira and never being able to get closer to him, and, this body that reflects but cannot produce their own light, and, I think that thread came out reading it as like an endlessly repeatable tragedy, but I kind of read it a lot more hopefully than that, because, like, now there are two moons. Now the moon is not alone because he has grasped love. And it's like the Dark Tower, where you start a new timeline and something is notably different. And so, like, there's the implicit hope that things will go differently this time rather than being endlessly recursive.
It also kind of makes you think, like, if you're viewing this, if you're viewing Crybaby as like the second go round, that's why it makes sense why things aren't exactly how they went down, like in the manga, and why things are just slightly different. Like, everything's the same, but just slightly different. And so you're like, oh, okay, if I look at it this way, that makes perfect sense.
Well, and like the mere decision to end it on the Earth being destroyed and coming back again, rather than, I think I looked up the last page of the manga is just Rio looking up, and the angels are there, and then that's the last panel.
Yeah. Like, oh, geez, like, we're fucked, aren't we?
That's some bleak shit. It's
that's one of the reasons why I feel like Crybaby, I want to go back and rewatch it again a second time, because I feel like because of the way it ended, it would really, you would get more out of it with a second viewing, I think. Just to sort of pick up more on those sort of things that you might have missed. I mean, also because, like, it just goes at breakneck speed, so...
Yeah, it's boy, that first half is rough. That first half is rough. It's like I have a lot of respect for what I feel like once it gets into the second half and the track meet, it really has like a firm idea of what it wants to do, and like a thrust in a character. Although Rio's arc has some bad pacing, but that first act is a lot of, like, it's the monster of the week kind of
Yeah.
things.
Mhm.
And especially Miki is so very, like, objectified and sexualized in, like, a super gross and non-necessary way. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are uncomfortable about Devilman
Right.
in general, and in this one too.
Yeah,
Um,
it's because, like, it's not that I'm, like, I didn't mind the orgy scene in the premiere or anything. Like, I'm fine to an extent with the fact that this is clearly a very overt story about adolescence and sex and violence and, like,
mm,
the driving forces of humanity or whatever,
mhm.
human id. But there is something very, very weird in, like, the photography arc being a lot of us getting to see Miki naked while he rescues her and she's unconscious. But then her arc in the second half of this series is about how she's very pure, that she's this very pure and sexless, figure.
Mm.
It's this weird,
She's like a
uncomfortable
savior,
duality.
basically.
Right. Yeah, and it's coded as her being this very pure Madonna kind of character.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't
Which
like. In retrospect, I was thinking about a lot of different plot points that just kind of, and I don't know if this was necessarily because it was rushed, but I just almost they felt confused or contradictory. Like the whole Taro turning into a demon thing. I'm not quite sure how he got possessed because that kind of defies the logic that they set up for how people got possessed in the first place.
that one kind of made sense to me because, like, they have those. I found them mildly irritating in an the precocious kid is watching porn kind of way, but at least it makes sense as a through line that because, like, he is absorbing this societal violence, he becomes he becomes a mindlessly consuming demon, which then becomes a slightly mixed metaphor because our demons a metaphor, like, okay, devilmen are a metaphor for marginalized and oppressed people, but
Yeah, it's kind of frustrating at times because like at times a lot of the premises in Devilman, like every version of it, even the original one, feel like kind of paper thin, like they're just barely holding on together. And I think part of it is when Go Nagai like originally made this manga, since Crybaby is basically like an adaptation of the manga. He was writing it basically week to week. He didn't really know where it was going or how he was going to end it. Up until I think he said maybe halfway through, when he first started the manga, it was a collaboration between was it Toei that does the anime, who did the original anime. They were basically like, okay, we want to use a bunch of your ideas to make this show. And he was like, okay, here's my ideas. And a general idea of like what the characters are like and like their story and stuff. And they were like, okay, we're going to make this anime. And then they made the anime, he made the manga.
Oh, was it simultaneous?
So the manga started like just before the anime did. So the anime is like kind of similar, but goes a completely different direction.
So it's like the opposite of Revolutionary Girl Utena.
Yeah. Yeah, where the anime is like really kind of like safe and
super
sort of,
kid friendly, yeah.
And yeah, and more family friendly because it played at like I think 8:00 at night or something. It was like an 8 p.m. time slot. Mm-hmm. And it was more of like almost like a tokusatsu hero sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Where you had a monster every week, and like Devilman had to fight him, and he had like super special powers. He had Devilman Punch and Devilman Kick and Devilman Beam and and all that stuff. Whereas like in the manga, he was like, yeah, it's gonna be this weird horror story where like I don't know, for a couple chapters, like he's gonna fight demons, and then I'm gonna just take it in a completely different direction. So I feel like when Yuasa was like, yeah, I want to do a pretty faithful adaptation of the manga, like that kind of lends to the pacing problem, because the pacing of the manga is really all over the place.
Yeah, I get it's one of those things where like, well, this is definitely one of the better cases of a fan of something made an adaptation of it, but
Right.
Also I'm not sure that the original source had really poor problems figuring out what story it wanted to tell early on is a thing you desperately need to carry over to an adaptation 50 years later.
Yeah, and I think that was part of the problem was, like, you know, he was like, well, I want to make it, like, a faithful adaptation because I really like it, because he said he was a huge fan. He really enjoys Devilman. But, like, you know, that poses the problem. Like, how do you do faithful adaptation? And I think he tried and succeeded mostly pretty well, but it still does have, like, the pacing problems, and sometimes you can't keep the rules of the Devilman and the demon and stuff, like, straight, because I don't think even Go Nagai really knew what he was talking about.
Yeah. Or just like thematic dissonance, like Mickey's speech scene where everybody hugs Devilman, and then they get in their cars, drive to her house, and burn her at the stake, which just felt weird.
I mean, it's not subtle at all, but also it's like, I see, you're doing a hilariously obvious duality of man thing. Okay, anime, fine.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess it's a little different for me, maybe because I'm like, oh, I already know what's coming when I was watching it, so maybe that was a bit of a hindrance for me, because I was like, oh, this is going to be the part where, like, you know, they all go kill Miki, like, you know, I knew what was coming, but a lot of people had no clue.
Yeah.
Although I did hear from some people where they were like, oh yeah, I knew Miki was gonna die in, like, episode 2.
Well, that is how that trope always works. It's one of my least favorite tropes, is the guy's got something going on, and he tries to protect a girl he knows by keeping her in ignorance, which inevitably makes her more in danger because she's not forearmed when the trouble eventually comes around to her, and lo and behold, she gets decapitated. So
yeah, pretty much.
Great trope.
It is interesting to me to, like, talk about how Yuasa wanted this to be a faithful adaptation, because I think the addition of Miki Kuroda is one of the best parts of of Crybaby.
Yeah, I feel like the things that he did add to it really sort of lend themselves well to what he felt were, like, the really strong parts of Devilman, which are, like, obviously, like, war is bad, and, you know, the whole, like, duality of man thing, like you were talking about earlier, and all this other stuff that you can really sort of dig into thematically when you're sort of picking apart the things in original Devilman. And so I really appreciated that. I was like, okay, he kind of knew what was going on, and he felt like he had some more to add to this and some more to say, and sort of, like, update it with some more timely aspects, which I appreciated.
Yeah, well, 'cause, like, it's like Miki is just a great character. I guess I should call her Miko. I feel bad because she's so mad about it. This fictional character is so mad about being called Miko. But for ease, we will just call her Miko. But it feels so necessary because I think Yuasa was aware that maybe if we make the only not straight character literally Satan, that in our story about, like, marginalized people, maybe that's a bad thing that we shouldn't do.
Well, there was the other track runner, too, who ends up joining the villains as well.
Yeah, Coda, oh my god, Coda would be unbearable if Miko did not exist. Like, I find him tolerable as a sort of tragic, pathetic figure, because there is also Miko being this very heroic figure, and, you know, Rio doing his thing.
Yeah.
In combination with the hopeful ending. But, yeah. God, Miko is good. Except I don't know why we needed the weird rape masturbation scene, because early Crybaby has issues that could have been streamlined.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, that felt weird. I didn't, because they had that scene earlier, and then she admits her love for Miki near the end.
I kind of wondered about that too, because I was like, I feel like there must be something behind that, but I can't quite really grasp what he was going for with it, especially the whole donkey noise thing.
Oh, that was weird. I don't know why they were making that comparison, Uh,
Yeah.
and like they called her out
Animal
like
lust,
twice or three
guys.
times. Yeah, it was weird. She kept
Like,
getting
I
called
don't.
out for making donkey noises, like 3 different people.
I'm
I
very.
was I was just like, okay, there has to be some sort of reasoning behind this, but I am at a loss. Like I cannot think of anything.
It's so weird that in like this very exploitation gore show, I'm fine with all the sex and the gore, and except like you could do without basically like 99% of the non-consensual shit, and it would be fine. It would
Mm.
be fine.
Mm. I also feel like if they'd left that part out
Mm-hmm.
and just had the part near the end where Miko was like, "Oh, and like I really loved you,"
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would have been a stronger without the whole,
Right.
weird donkey noise.
Yeah, that part I can't figure out what they were trying to accomplish with it later because I mean she met that one guy and he did the rap and then I actually don't know what
Died off screen.
I don't even know what happened to him because it's sort of implied that he died at the club, but then was that him yelling at the police that his old friends had a gun in the
No, I
store?
think he died off screen because you get a close up of his severed fingers and you can see his tattoo on him.
Yeah, but that's after the scene. I mean, that looked like him, but for some reason he wasn't with Miko, but he was in the same store. That was him, right? But all I know, I just know to call him Butterfly Guy because I don't remember his real name, which is kind of funny because that was his big deal. Was nobody could remember who he was. But yeah, then I guess he dies sometime after like shit starts getting dystopic because you see his severed fingers later on when I guess Miko's just kind of wandering around from house to house during her disappearance. It's really that's one of the things that in retrospect I'm just like what was going on there. It felt like that scene was supposed to get that's what got the gangsters on Mickey's side, but just kind of the narrative engineering around it kind of just created more holes than it helped to fill.
Right. Yeah, it I've seen bits here and there of discussion around how Crybaby versus like the original Devilman handled this concept about like demons as fear of the next generation. And I can't really speak so much to the manga, but it feels like Yuasa's version is definitely trying to grapple with that by, having these gangster characters who are voice acted by actual rappers in the Japanese rap scene, and very prominently including queer characters as the Devilmen who are able to grapple with these demons and use them to become stronger. And I'm not. It's a little bit of a shaky metaphor in places, but it feels like it's something he thought was important and really wanted to grapple with. That these are things because it's so primarily like the military and adults and whatnot who start the panics.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
And
you find out that the adults are the authority figures are the demons, and they're telling everybody that you need to not trust these people who don't conform to society. And then the cameras turn off and all of them turn into monsters. Yeah, I think he was kind of
Yeah, not very subtle.
well, yeah. It was a kind of what do you call that? A heel turn on that idea, and I mean very intentionally. So I can dig that. I mean, one of the things I thought was very powerful about the Apocalypse and Evangelion, because we have to make that comparison a couple times probably, is that it was sort of the result of these very paternalistic figures in Seilei and Gendo fighting over the ability to sort of write the new era of the world. And of course that ended up kind of making Shinji suffer and leading him down this path that eventually ended in this awful apocalypse, because he couldn't handle that sort of situation on his own, and he hadn't really received guidance. He'd just been manipulated, and of course they wanted to take the reins of that themselves. So I feel like in that way it was very similar, where everybody's just sort of trying to guide the future and make it in their own image, and then we ended up with a blasted hellscape and a red ocean.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
it's a little unfortunate that there's kind of this disconnect in how Ryo's plot arc is paced, because once he like the point from which he goes to following from being Tomoyo and following Akira around with a camera to like actively pushing for the end of the world when he still doesn't know that he's Satan it's a little bumpy. It's a little bumpy. It's like he's two different characters.
Yeah, I had a problem with that too. It felt very like I could feel the Tyler Durden about to appear. But the thing with Fight Club was everything Tyler Durden did was just sort of like the subconscious desires of the main character. It's just things that like moralistically he wouldn't want to do. It was just kind of like the toxic masculinity within him, right? That was the whole message of Fight Club. But in Ryo's case, like it's literally like there was another brain inside him that was doing things while he was asleep that was not. I don't know where Ryo starts and Satan begins. I feel like I know where Tyler Durden starts and God, I don't even remember what the other character's name is in Fight Club.
He doesn't have a name.
Oh, he doesn't? Well, they named him in...
Yeah, they just call him Jack.
They named him in the movie, right?
Well, no, he has this running thing about how he's Jack's ex because of a news article that he read, but he's just called the narrator generally anyway.
All right, well, you know what I mean. Yeah, like
I do.
There's sort of distinctions, and then it's just like, was Ryo, did he ever exist? I don't know. But even then, I get the feeling that all of that would have happened even without... Because he said demons were starting to appear before he got there anyway. Would the result have been any different whether or not Satan existed?
Well, in other versions, it's Ryo the person died and Satan took over his body, right?
I would get that, like if Satan was just using him as a vessel and then kills him when he doesn't need him anymore. But I guess kind of like it's a Griffith thing where he still feels the love of his
we can't go down that way. Don't make me the weird 90s Griffith stand.
All right.
I was just thinking earlier today, are we going to start seeing Ryo did nothing wrong?
Oh, no.
It's already happened. Ryo did a lot of things wrong, and I like the gay Satan.
Fandom is circular.
Yeah.
I mean, this Crybaby kind of proves it with the end of Evangelion ending there.
I don't know. I know you said the ending was kind of hopeful, but I really felt like the story is just kind of about the death of hope, even with Yuasa's changes. Like, it seemed like it was just sort of snuffing out every hope there could have possibly been. And Satan's whole deal was he was trying to, I guess, fight God, because God was this calculating, callous, uncaring being in the sky, and then God ended up not helping mankind and just glassing the planet after the fact anyway.
That was interesting to me, actually, because as I gather, like in the anime, Satan talks about he came to Earth and he discovered demons, and he liked that they were so like simple and straightforward, in their emotions. But in the manga, he talks about like being mad, if I am done my research correctly, like being upset that these were creatures who were made by God but were rejected. And I don't know why that was changed, because it seems like the former version would fit in really well with what Crybaby was doing.
Yeah, that was the way the first half like portrays Ryo, like you were saying, was really different than the original story. Like, in the original story, he basically goes to Akira and explains exactly what he wants to do to him. Because he's like, oh, after all this research and all these things, like, this is what's going on. These are what demons are, and this is what's happening. But if we told people, they would panic. It would be anarchy. It would be awful. So I want to turn you or me. Well, he kind of does, like, it could be either one of us, but I think you would work well because you have such a pure heart, and you're a good person, and you have a good strong sense of justice. He really drives that home. Like, you have a very strong sense of justice, and like if we could combine with a demon or a devil or something, maybe we could fight back. And Akira is like, okay, I'm scared, but I trust you, Ryo, because you're my friend. Like, so he lays all the cards out on the table for him and explains everything before they go to this party. But in Crybaby, it's just like, hey, what up, Akira? We're going to this party. And so he doesn't really explain, like, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm taking you to this party because I want you to turn into a half-demon thing to help save the world.
So I assume the revelation is different, where Ryo purposefully reveals to humanity that demons exist, or in the manga, is it such a grand?
It's similar. I believe he does it on TV. It's been a long time since I've looked through the manga, but it's very similar. It's just not as I want to say he didn't seem as cold and calculating as he kind of did in Crybaby, where he was just like, yeah, here's some doctored footage of my friend.
I'm doing this for you, honey.
Yeah. So it almost feels like this, at times, Crybaby's Ryo, like, doesn't seem as caring, but that might be, you know, part of Yuasa's whole, like, he doesn't totally understand his feelings yet. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't understand it, so he's, like, trying to pull against it at times. Like,
I mean, we literally don't know what Ryo's mental state is during this, because we don't know when it's him acting or when Satan's acting, or if Ryo, like, ever even existed, kind of.
It's interesting.
And it feels like an important thing to have, because, like, I know he seems to have, from interviews, been trying to do this thing where, like, Akira is the protagonist, but it's Ryo's story kind of thing. But it feels like that would be a really, really important distinction to make. Like, I can see kind of what he's trying to do, because, you know, early Ryo has statements about how, like, I would do anything for you. You're the only person I care about.
Yes,
God
exactly. Bless
him. This fucking boy.
I'll shoot this skullgirl in the head to make sure that your identity never gets out.
Yep.
I'm gonna blow up this old lady.
and then, like, also saying with perfect seriousness, no, I don't think demons can love. Like, I can kind of see him trying to set up this moment at the end, but I feel like it was still a little clumsy in places where it really needed to be clear.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I that is a very good way of kind of, it's like about, the whole story is about Tyler Durden's, like, friend or somebody in his gang or something. Just kind of you're not sure who was who or when.
And I kind of like that sort of second person, that kind of second person focus in stories, but they have to be really carefully crafted.
Yeah, I mean, there have been other kind of turns like that where, like, a character realizes that they've been doing things that they don't know about, where I feel like there's a better perception of like whether they changed or what. Yeah, with Ryo, I just by the end of it, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like I wasn't sure if he was a character.
I mean, it's not like Akira is, like, completely uninteresting. He's certainly a very, like, I appreciate, especially considering that this is a 50-year-old manga from the 70s, what it is at least trying to do with the idea that masculinity, you know, that empathy and crying and showing your emotions are very important parts of those, of, you know, growing up and being male and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the most powerful scene in the entire series for me was Taro's dad, when he came upon Taro and his wife in the tent.
Oh,
because
that was so hard to watch.
Yeah, I think he was in this place where he felt like it was his responsibility to kill them both, but he just couldn't, like, make himself commit that act of violence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I even knew it was coming, and it was still, like, super hard to watch that.
Yeah, they drew that out, and I think that was a good idea. That scene was super. That was my favorite scene, I think.
Yeah, he's a new addition as well, and so is Miki being mixed race, right?
Well, Miki's parents are in the manga, but I don't think they are mixed race in the manga. I'm pretty sure they're just both normal Japanese parents. But the way it plays out is not nearly as emotionally impactful as it is in Crybaby.
Right. Well, and I've heard a lot of you know, the talk of being of Hafu is also a really, really rough experience if you're living in Japan. So that also
yeah.
I'm sure it's partly so that they can have really ham-fisted conversations about Christianity, because this fucking story, bless its heart, but also it's a way of making Miki part of this group of outsiders, and it's nice. And this goes nowhere in particular, but I really, really love the scene where the two Mikis have like this really joyful moment of connection right before they fucking die.
Yeah.
But also all my
Yeah.
tears.
Oh, the baton, the passing the baton. Oh God.
Yeah, I love that analogy up until it hit Rio, and it was just like,
Yeah.
God,
that broke my heart. It was so sad.
Yeah.
It was so well done, though. It was a great way to kind of tie all of them together.
It was, I think. Although, I don't know. I think when Miki died, that's when the show lost me, personally. I felt like that's when they basically just said, because there was another sort of like narrative leading up into this. It was kind of like, with what you were saying earlier, Akira was a decent character, and they had this like Teen Wolf thing going on with him, right, where he was having like these sexual urges that he was afraid of, and these violent urges, and they started getting into that, like where he's wondering whether he can kind of keep up being a human as well, and that's why he feels this need to redeem other people like him, so that he can prove that either people can stay people, or there's some ways that demons and humans can coexist, which I feel is very important for kind of keeping this idea of hope moving forward, or like with the next cycle or whatever like that. Because regardless of what Satan thinks, demons will still exist, right? And apparently they're unkillable, and they are violently inclined, and have the ability to possess humans. So there's literally no way that the demons will ever, ever, ever go away. So having this idea that they can kind of coexist, and having Rio sort of, or Akira kind of prove that, at least before Satan's influence ends up fucking everything up, I think would have been kind of a strong indication that, like, maybe the next time around, the humans and demons can find some sort of way to, or I don't know, the demons can be defanged and they can live alongside one another, or I don't know, just some way of solving this freaking demon problem. And I felt like since that was sort of pushed under the table with this like evolving Rio into Satan situation, it kind of led to this sort of apocalyptic scenario where kind of the only one left was Miki, who was sort of, or Miki and Akira, who were these representations of like altruism and basic human goodness. And yeah, then Miki gets like this really dragged out scene of somebody cutting her fucking spine out of her back, and Rio gets beaten to death. So yeah, that's when we're talking about like hope for the future, maybe that like kind of like thread at the end, it's a bare thread to me, because of the kind of the way they handled that middle plot as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still down with it to an extent, because like so much of the Devilman's character arcs becomes this forcibly metaphorized thing of like the demons are your demons. They are your metaphorical demons, and if you can overcome them, you can become this very powerful, much stronger thing, because there will always be oppression in the universe. There will always be God coming to kick your fucking teeth down your throat. But, you know, there is, as long as you can learn and change, you know, you can grow stronger and overcome that, which is, to me, why that ending with Satan realizing what love is, and then the rebirth of the universe works. But I will agree that there is this severe disconnect between Miki's death and the final battle, where like Akira has this moment of, truly human beings are the monsters. Well, I guess let's go kill all the demons now. Wait.
Yeah. Oh, I think at the end
What?
he just wanted he was pissed off at Rio and wanted to beat him up or some shit like that. Yeah, but I felt like Miki's death represented that humanity didn't deserve to continue existing. That when they killed her, that was like, I can't really make the analogy of putting Jesus on the cross, because that was him taking everybody's sins. It was basically it was the unforgivable act of humanity that proved that that we deserved whatever came next, and I think that we did, at least in Devilman. Yeah, because I mean, Satan was there to manipulate, but ultimately, I don't know. It seemed like all the horrible acts at that point. Yeah, which is why that scene where everybody's hugging Devilman just felt so out of place. Like, it felt like
so cheesy.
it was leading. Yeah,
like
it was leading every. I mean, I liked it. I thought that, like, I was like, is this going to be a turning point? It's a little awkward, but okay, I get it. But it was just like a hiccup on the road, on this like death spiral that had been happening for the past 3 episodes, and it seemed so out of place. Like, everybody took a break from slowly like murdering each other and like doing drugs and like ending up the end of freaking Akira just to hug Devilman for 5 seconds, and then they went right back to business. It was so weird.
I mean, I think it's at least meant to be another, like, this time around is fucked, but look, here's an example of how people can come around. So, like, this, we're all not completely fucked forever.
Yeah.
But also, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like him, like, Yuasa and the whole crew, like, including something like that, they wanted to try to push forward that whole, like, war is bad narrative. And, we gotta learn that, like, yeah, like, humans fucking suck. They're terrible, but not everybody is terrible. Like, in small, contained groups, we're not so bad. But in the larger scope of things, yeah, sometimes it's really hard to get along.
Yeah, but even then, like, half the people in Team Mickey ended up betraying them as well, right? Yeah, that was another narrative
Well, I
thread
mean,
I didn't get. The short one saw Miko's glasses, and I didn't know what the significance of that was. I feel like that's the reason he turned on them, but I don't know what it was about her yellow sunglasses that, if he'd seen them before or something, that made him do that. Oh, maybe it was, were those originally worn by Butterfly Guy?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
okay, that's it. He probably figured she killed him or something. Maybe.
Yes.
All right.
He was like, "Oh, you're a demon because you killed what's his name.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get you before you get
He
me."
did shoot at her.
It's very
It's the
not
whole-
it's very not subtle, but
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the whole creeping doubt narrative that, like, oh, I'm gonna get you before you get me because that's how the apocalypse rolls now. I guess. I did, though, like, during that whole scene, I just kept going, I would hug him. His legs look very furry and soft. He looks like he would be nice to hug.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. I would.
Yeah, I mean,
I
I liked the scene. I don't know where it connected with anything else in the story. In isolation, I was
it
like,
is-
oh,
I mean,
great scene.
It's a little ham-fisted.
Just a little bit. Like I can see, like, we wanted to contrast this with the violence as ham-fistedly as possible, but also, like, there was no other place you could put this in here.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
I agree with you
the
that
placing was a little weird.
Yuasa was trying to make a more optimistic outlook. It felt like there were 2 or 3 changes that he made that felt awkward, I guess.
It's. I think the Crybaby keeps brushing up against the fact that it wants to make a hopeful version of a very bleak story, and it both wants to inject that, but also it eventually is code by needing to follow the narrative beats. Like, everybody has to fucking die.
Yeah. Which is interesting because, like, I've read things, like, I believe in a long time ago there used to be, somebody had posted this big thing that Go Nagai had wrote for the bilingual version of the Devilman manga, where he ended what he said with, like, he had hope for the future, and I think that was something that maybe, like, Yuasa kind of took, like, literally, like, maybe this is something that, like, I should run with, like, hope for the future. But it's kind of hard to, like you said, it's really hard to sort of fit that into that sort of story because it doesn't seem very hopeful at times. And sometimes you wonder, like, is that really something that fits in with this story? But it's interesting to see how he tried to make more of an effort to put that in there than Go Nagai ever did.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think it's definitely going to be a your mileage may vary kind of case. It's an uneven project on the whole, but I am super glad for his additions because, like, there are certain things that would be unbearable in the year of our Lord 2018. Like, like the sad death of Akira's hetero love interest at the hands of the machinations of literal gay Satan as they go off to their final tragic battle where everybody dies and then he cries about it.
Yeah, I didn't really know what to expect when he said, like, oh, it's going to be true to the manga. It's going to have the manga ending. Like, all, like, what, 10 of the Devilman fans on Twitter at the time were like, what?
Yeah.
How is he going to pull that off?
How's that
That's
going?
going to be interesting.
How's it going having
And-
this influx of new people?
Yeah.
I will say, like, I personally don't really. The Death of Hope type stories aren't really my speed. So, like, if you're cool with that, I think it's a much more enjoyable experience. It's just basically how much tragedy you can take in your fiction that kind of, I think, colors your perception of the story as a whole if you watch it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those stories that it can be read in different ways. And like Vrai was saying, like, your miles may vary for sure. I mean, there's a lot of people who I knew that were like, oh, I'm going to try that crybaby thing. And they couldn't even get past one episode. Mm-hmm. And I can totally understand that, because Devilman is one of those things where it's like, there's not, it's usually either like, I am very into this or I am very not into this. So well, I totally understand when people are like, I tried and I just could not do it.
It's definitely one of those cases where I think the extremity of the content, of the sex, if not the violence at least, really tones down at the halfway mark. But there's also enough important stuff in those early, really messy, really extreme, very trying to be shocking episodes that I'm not sure you can just say, watch the premiere and then skip to X point. So it's like a tough recommend.
Yeah, it really is. Especially if, like, your threshold, like you said, is much smaller for those things like that. I mean, like, I'm a horror fan.
Yeah.
And I've watched so many bad horror things over the years. So, like, my threshold is probably a lot higher than a lot of people. And I guess it also helped that, like, I already know the story of Devilman, so I knew what to expect. There were a lot of people who did not know what to expect and just went in totally blind. And, bless you all for trying something new.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if it horrified you and scarred you deeply.
It was definitely a case where once I got into the groove, I was pretty into it. But, like, mostly during the photographer creeps on teen girls arc, I was like, oh, I saw this handled way better in Paranoia Agent without the feeling that I'm supposed to be jerking it to these teenage girls. Cool.
Right. Yeah.
That felt pretty unnecessary. Just him, period. That entire character. Maybe it might have been as like sort of a lead into Humans Suck, but hell of a way to do it.
Like, I really enjoy Yuasa's work, and he does a lot of really interesting things with properties like this. And so when you give him a lot of creative freedom, I feel like he really plays around with a lot of things. And sometimes that works really, really well. But other times he doesn't always, like, connect all the threads together as best he could. And it's like, well, you tried, and it was at least interesting.
Yeah.
So I can forgive that. But there are a lot of people out there that don't particularly like his, like, style, like, visually or thematically, which I also understand. But I feel like it really lends itself to Devilman, because Devilman itself is, like, a really weird property, and he has a lot of, like, weird visual stylings and visual tics. So for me, it, like, worked. But there are definitely times where I was like, the story kind of meanders and does weird stuff that I was like, that could have been better.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. Yuasa is a great person to give it to in terms of, this is definitely going to be something new and interesting and exciting and thoughtful. Like, the only other director I could think who would be up to it thematically is the sadly late Satoshi Kon, and his art style would be terrible for Devilman.
Yeah, it would have been really interesting to see him, like, direct a Devilman thing, but maybe not necessarily, like, do the character designs and whatnot.
I think that'd be good. He does that very where, like, it becomes hyper real until it's grotesque kind of art in some of his movies. I'd be interested.
That's
I mean,
true.
obviously, this.
I mean, it would be kind of interesting. I mean, considering that old OVA, like, there were a lot of animators and stuff that worked on that old Devilman OVA that were Studio Ghibli animators.
Yeah, I definitely got to get a hold of that at some point.
Yeah, so there's a lot of scenes where, like, Miki looks almost like she could be in a Studio Ghibli movie.
Oh no, that's unsettling. Oh no, that's terrible and bad. I don't want this.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. I mean, it's not completely like Ghibli-ized, but like once you know that, you can kind of see it a little bit. But those OVAs are like incredibly, like, beautifully animated. They're very, very detailed. They're very, very gorgeous. I keep like poking at Discotheque, like, hey, you know, those old OVAs would look really good on Blu-ray here, you know? Wink,
Give 'em
wink,
time.
nudge, nudge.
They're single-handedly rescuing every single old anime property, so, like, give it time.
I know, it's hard work for them.
It would be nice if we I mean,
But
I don't know if they'll bother, but a Devilman Crybaby set might be nice, actually.
I hope that Netflix puts out a Blu-ray of Crybaby, and it would be great if they had like some like director commentary on there or something.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I'd buy that in a second.
I don't know if they do physical media, although I do think they sometimes sell the IPs to other companies to do physical for them.
Yeah, because I know it was Sentai released Knights of Sidonia. Some of their other like Netflix original stuff, like I know Orange is the New Black got a DVD release and a Blu-ray release, but I can't remember if they sold that to somebody else to release or if they did it themselves.
Yeah, it was Sentai Filmworks. I happen to have the Knights of Sidonia box set right here. So yeah, I guess they sold it over to them.
So I'm like, somebody please.
Help. Please. I guess anyone want do either of you have kind of wrap up final thoughts on Crybaby or Devilman generally?
I just really think it's interesting how we went from nobody in the Western world gave a shit about Devilman to everybody loves Devilman almost overnight. And I kind of think it's great. I would really encourage, if you did like Crybaby, to, when the original manga gets released here in English, to check it out, because I feel like Go Nagai is one of those mangaka that really influenced a whole bunch of people, like a whole generation of manga artists, and we don't really know a whole lot about him here in the English-speaking world. And I feel like just now people are starting to be like, oh yeah, that we're connecting the dots, kind of like what I was saying earlier. And so if you did enjoy that, like, definitely check that out and see where some of your favorite manga artists got inspiration for stuff like Berserk or Evangelion, or, you know, a million other things. It's kind of like an interesting history lesson, but you're learning it backwards.
Peter?
I'd say similar note, although just from what I've seen so far, I think Go Nagai's story is much messier than what Yuasa put together. I think Yuasa's might be messy because it was trying to straighten out a lot of things and kind of make a through line for the story as well.
Yeah.
I'd say it is definitely worth watching. It's quite the visual spectacle, and it does have some very good moments, just so long as you're down to watch a lot of violence, sex demons, and you're okay with the highest level of tragedy that anime can achieve.
Oh, the body horror is so good, though. God, it's so good.
Yep.
It really is. It really is. You also at Anime Fest, you know, when asked about Devilman, he said it was a lot of hard work, and he's really proud of it, and he thinks it's really beautiful, and he hopes everybody enjoyed it.
Oh, that's adorable. Right. All right. I'd say that about, I would say that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for joining us, by the way. It would be really great to, have you back sometime.
Oh, well, thank you. I was honestly, like, kind of nervous.
Oh, nah, you were great. Listeners, tell her she was great. She was great.
Thank Thank you.
Yeah, definitely
I
we'll
appreciate it.
we'll have to do this again sometime. I like talking about older series.
Yes.
All right.
Talking about older things is kind of my brand now, I guess.
It's a good brand. It's a good brand as we become old and crotchety in the animu sphere. All right. Well, listeners, if you enjoyed this podcast, you can always find more of our work on SoundCloud. And if you can leave a rating or review, we always appreciate that. If you would like to support the work that we do here and help us do more of it, you can toss us $1 on Patreon at patreon.com/animefeminist. Every dollar helps. We really appreciate it to help pay our editors and contributors. You can also talk to us on facebook.com/animefeminist and on twitter.com, Twitter/animefeminist, or on Tumblr at tumblr.com/animefeminist or animefeminist.tumblr.com. Wow. All right. Thanks so much for joining us. Till next time, Anifam.